afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all had a great morning despite this shocking weather. You're listening to Upstart Live with myself, Alana Mazurk, and this guy sitting next to me, Naim Kurt. How are you, Kurt?
I'm good, but I'm a bit bummed out about the weather, I'm afraid.
Wouldn't you be more bummed that the Crows smashed North over the weekend?
I was a bit bummed about that too, but we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later.
I don't want to talk about it really, but what is it with the weather? It's something about it just makes people drive horribly.
Yes, and it's also as soon as I see grey clouds, it's like you just don't want to get out of bed. And then when you get out of bed, you have to sit in traffic with bad drivers. It's just a bad day, really.
Anyway.
Springtime is coming, though. It's super great to have you here with us today. We broadcast live at 2 p.m. every Tuesday on upstart.net.au. And we have another big show again this week. Coming up, we have our very own Hit or Miss with Josh Honafinger and Kyle Humphries sitting in with us, talking about the Rio Paralympics at the moment. As well, we have a story from Kyle again, where finally South Africa has passed laws that make sure black athletes are given equal treatment in sport. But first, I'll pass it on to Kurt for the day's headlines.
Thank you, Alana. Attorney General George Brandis has pushed the need for tougher anti-terror laws after a man was allegedly chased and stabbed in what has been described as a terrorist-inspired incident. 59-year-old Wayne Greenhart was walking his dog in the southwestern Sydney suburb of Minto when he was allegedly chased and stabbed by Ishus Khan, a 22-year-old Australian-born Bangladeshi. Khan, who suffers from schizophrenia, is alleged by police to have been influenced by foreign terrorist groups. Under the two proposed bills being pushed by Brandis, teenagers as young as 14 will be allowed to be kept under house arrest. The other bill will also allow for individuals convicted of terrorism-related offences, including treason, to be detained indefinitely after they've been served their prison terms if they are deemed to be a threat to society. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has pulled out of a planned political fundraiser after her collapse on Sunday. The fundraiser was planned to take place in California, but was cancelled to allow Clinton to recuperate after being diagnosed with pneumonia just 2 months out from the presidential elections. At a ceremony to commemorate 9/11 victims, the Democratic presidential candidate was seen to stumble as she entered a waiting vehicle and had to be helped by her aides. Whilst initially putting the collapse down to heat exhaustion, she was later diagnosed with pneumonia by her physician. Clinton's health has been a topic of debate during this election as Republican candidate Donald Trump has repeated conspiracy theories regarding Clinton's health and that she is physically too weak to tackle America's enemies. Syrian government forces have bombed rebel-held strongholds hours just before a Russian and US-led ceasefire was set to take place. Syrian government jets struck targets in Aleppo, which has been home to some of the fiercest fighting in the bloody 4-year civil conflict. The ceasefire deal was hammered out between US Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Geneva last week. Under the terms, the Syrian government and rebel forces will begin a nationwide halt in violence. Extremist groups such as Islamic State and Fatah al-Sham were to be universally excluded from the ceasefire, allowing Russian and US warplanes to focus on them.
Yeah, I saw the footage of Hillary Clinton and she looked very shaky indeed.
It was dramatic footage, and what I loved about it too was how well prepared her aides were, and they quickly picked her up, scooped her off into the car. Another aide turned around and kind of blocked the view from the cameras. So.
It wasn't even media; it was just somebody around at the 9/11 tribute with a phone. So they would have got so much money for selling that footage to the media.
And there was some fantastic tweets that came out about it too. I think there was one from one person who was retweeted over 30,000 times, which said that this is the first time that Republicans have cared about Hillary Clinton's health before, or a woman's health before.
Yeah. So, I love how they're just saying she's 68 years old and she's got pneumonia and she's going to die in like 5 years' time.
There was even some crazy conspiracy theories I heard that they said that people were saying today that the person out there as Hillary Clinton was actually a body double, and the real Hillary Clinton is still in bed somewhere.
Oh yeah, just chilling at home while some fake Hillary Clintons walk around. Well, talking about more stories, as you know that we broadcast live on upstartnet.au every week.
Yes.
But also on upstart.net.au, they post amazing stories every week from our very own students. So we've got one by Nathan Oakley who discusses the debate over the effect of the Skyrail proposal. Have you heard about the Skyrail proposal?
The Skyrail is a huge issue, especially in the southeast of Melbourne.
I was going to say,
there's been some rowdy locals speaking about that.
Well, spokeswoman Diane Hunt from Lower Our Tracks Incorporated, which is a community group opposed to Sky Rail, states that a major portion will be taken by car parking and the paths are disjointed and not continuous. So her main problem is that basically there's going to be some graffiti underneath, and that the width of the corridor means that it'll be dominated by massive concrete pylons. But I don't know, I haven't looked into it enough to see. Nathan, he posed the other side, which was really good, that the aim of the removal of crossing is to have, help the traffic congestion. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've called themselves Lower Our Tracks Incorporated as well. So they're turning themselves into they're not just a community group, but it looks like they're a incorporated organisation too.
Well, we're going to be right back. It's only, 2:06 this afternoon, and we'll be back in a second.
And we're back, and unfortunately we're having a little bit of technical difficulties at the moment, so I think we're just going to focus on a complete audio show today. No, not as much visuals.
But still go to upstart.net.au.
Yes, of course, to listen.
See those stories all for yourself visually. Anyway, we're going to be showing the story that I was incredibly intrigued about from Kyle. Have you...
Yeah, and it's about the racial quotas in South African sport. So Kyle has put together a fantastic package, and really, since apartheid ended at the start of the 90s, South Africa has performed a tricky balancing act to keep all ethnicities happy, and sport is a major issue in South Africa, and Kyle Humphreys explains the new regulations which are set to be put in place.
We've all been there, watching Kevin Peterson smacking 227 against Australia in Adelaide, December 2011. It's frustrating. He's South African and single-handedly winning Ashes series for England. A lot of people hate it, but there is a pretty solid reason why it happens. After almost 3 decades in domestic teams, strict racial quotas have been introduced into national sides for the first time. It's kind of like reverse discrimination. It's making up for all the pain caused during the apartheid era. Independent sporting bodies have until the 25th of September to get their ratios in order. If they don't, they'll face consequences from the South African government. The consequences are financial. The government will not support any sporting body bidding for any international tournament, which means no funding. It isn't just cricket which is affected. Rugby union has also been put on notice with the lack of coloured players in the Springboks squad over the last decade. There are 11 in a cricket team, with 6 needing to be non-white. 2 of them, black African, and the other can be any player.
Sorry about that, everyone. It just didn't seem to be working. We are having some streaming issues. But Kyle is in the studio with us, luckily enough. Thanks, Kyle, for joining us.
No worries.
So let's talk about it. Finally, when was the regulation brought in?
It's got to be in by the 25th of September, so they can apply for international events, the South African sporting bodies. So
we've got cricket in for the summer series, don't we?
Yeah, they're coming over here, just before Christmas. So basically it affects their ability to sort of apply for events like that, the World Cup a few years ago.
Can we explain what the legislation is?
So they've got to have... the cricket team and the rugby team are the big ones affected. The soccer team, it's a majority black sport, so there's no issues there. But the rugby, they have to have 8 players in the team of 15 that are of colour. And the cricket team bumps it up to 6 players of colour out of 11.
So the problem there is actually finding black players that are good enough to be on the team.
They're doing well finding these players for cricket. They got a fast bowler called Kasigo Rabada who's 20 and bowls absolutely rapid. He'll be in Australia in a couple of months. He's a very good player. The issue is with the rugby. There's say 23 on. On a Saturday, there'll be 23 players, 15 on the ground, 8 on the bench, and they're very underrepresented. And it comes through South African private school culture, sort of with rugby union and cricket, similar to how it works in like Sydney private schools with rugby union. So they just all sort of come out of there, and there's obviously, well, it's not obviously, but the blacks don't really get the opportunity to go to those schools, so they don't get...
You said there was a coloured quota, and we know in South African society it's not just whites and blacks, there's Indians, there's people of mixed race as well. Do they fall under the coloured quota or not?
So, yeah, they do. It's like anyone that's not white. So cricket, 2 of those players have to be black African, and the other 4, they can be Cape coloured, it's called. It's like a sort of a mixture. And then there's like Hashim Amla, who's Indian. So, yeah, it just doesn't matter. And it's very... the Cape coloured's very broad.
So we'll be getting the answer for that on the 25th.
They all have to stick by it. So, on the 25th. So
We'll
basically, the cricket teams, Dale Steyn, AB de Villiers, Francois Dubussy, walk-in starts, and there's 2 other spots for white players, which isn't many. And my little piece sort of touched on all the frustration of like an Australian watching the Ashes where Kevin Peterson's smacking double hundreds for England, and we're all moaning that he's South African, and it's unfair. So,
let's move on now. We're going to be talking. Josh Schonefinger is in with us as well. So you both are going to give us a Paralympic roundup. How's the Aussies been doing?
They've started quite well. In fact, compared to our Olympians, have been doing very well. In fact, they sit 7th on the medal tally at the minute with 7 golds, but quite a fair way behind the dominant Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese have got it's 118 medals at the moment: 50 gold, 40 silver, 28 bronze. It's a
50 gold.
Yeah, it's a good conversion rate.
It seems to be the Paralympics has a lot more medals on offer than what's on offer in the Olympics.
Because of all the disabilities in each event, there's
Right.
several runnings of each event. And so China had 12 gold medals alone last night.
Good grief.
So they're doing quite well for themselves at the minute. But we wanted to focus on the Australians who have done really well and some of the great stories that have come out of the Australian gold medalists from this Paralympics.
Yeah, we got Katie Kelly. She's won gold in the PT5 triathlon. She completed it with a guide, Michelle Jones, who's actually competed herself, hasn't she, Josh?
Yeah, she won. She won silver in the Sydney 2000 Olympics in the triathlon, and now she runs along and rides and swims along with Katie Kelly, who has Usher syndrome, causing vision and hearing loss. So they complete all 3 aspects of that triathlon together, and I think we've got a still of them on the tandem bike together. So it's really quite an amazing event. And after the race, Jones said that despite winning silver by herself in Sydney 2000, to me this has been the best thing that I've ever done. So obviously a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, it's very good. And we've also got Brendan Hall. He's won a gold in the S9 classification in the 400-metre freestyle. Back-to-back wins after he completed that in London. So his story is he's contracted deep vein thrombosis as a 6-year-old and had to lose his right leg or his life. So, it's another good effort from Brendan.
Absolutely. And just last night he also won another silver, so he's doing very well for himself. David Nicholas is our fastest rider. He won a gold in the 3,000 metres individual pursuit. He suffers from cerebral palsy, but that didn't stop him on his way to the Paralympic record last night.
Yeah, then we have 17-year-old Madison Elliott's won gold in the S8 100-metre freestyle in a Paralympic record, so it's very good from her too.
After the race, she said, I was a bit worried because we had a Brazilian swimmer in the race, so the crowd was really bizarre. But I was just like, I have to learn to focus on my own event and my race plan, and that's what I did. I managed to get the Paralympic record. So congratulations, Madison Elliott. She was swimming in the same race as Lakeisha Patterson, who won gold in the S8 400-metre freestyle. She also suffers from cerebral palsy, but as a 17-year-old to go to the Paralympics and win gold, what an outstanding display.
I think she knocked off an American girl who was just ridiculous winning streak in that event
Yeah.
since probably, I think it was Sydney. I know what she looks like, but
And
the
I
name escapes me.
I think Patterson said that she even idolised her, so to knock off your idol.
Yeah, it's very good.
And overnight we had some more golds for the Aussies. Braden Davidson in the long jump and Tim Diskin in the swimming.
Braden Davidson, he's only like 16 or 15 too. Everybody in the Paralympic who is doing really well are all so young. It's just really inspiring.
Yeah, Davidson is Adelaide based, as you
Ooh,
might know, and
Adelaide.
he's 18-year-old.
Oh, 18.
So he jumped 5.62 metres, which is also a Paralympic record.
That's huge. No, it seems, I think it's a shame that it's only on 7/2 and that a lot of other shows, TV channels don't have any broadcasting rights at all. So you can't show it.
Yeah, the biggest shame is Fox Sports News.
Yeah.
They had the little team for the Olympics proper, but because of the IOC rules, they've just been completely frozen out of everything, so they don't even bother with it,
Yeah,
which
so
is
we
a
don't
shame.
we don't
It
get
is
to
a
watch this
shame.
and
I
it
mean,
doesn't promote it.
I was looking through the history of the Paralympics, and I think in the 2000 Sydney Olympics, the American broadcasters didn't even broadcast it until 2 months after the event
What?
had
At
finished.
all? Oh, right.
Yeah, so
2 months. What's the point of that?
yeah, and that's just I mean, they are getting cut short often in getting the attention they deserve.
Yeah,
I think
they
because
are.
there's so many inspiring stories there.
Especially because they're so young.
Yeah. And do we have any update on Ahmed Kelly, Upstart's very own?
Not too sure. He posted his little schedule on his Facebook page. I did miss it. I was busy at 1 a.m. Unfortunately. So I'm not too sure how he goes. I had a flick through his Facebook and try to find some articles online, but there doesn't seem to be much coverage.
Yeah.
Again, the
written
problem
about him,
of coverage.
Coverage has been tough to find. And we get all these great stories like last night in the 1,500 metres. The Paralympians actually recorded faster times than the Olympians did in their respective events.
Yeah, so that's the 1,500 metre running race. For the visually impaired, they just went out and just
It's an unbelievable
smashed
story,
it. Yeah, no tactics, just went out and just ran. It's very good to see.
So congratulations to Abdeltiaf Baka from Algeria who won that.
And
gold
thank
medal.
you, Josh and Kurt, for coming in and telling us all about the Paralympic.
No worries, I'm
Absolute
Kyle.
pleasure.
I'm
Sorry?
Kyle.
What did I say?
You said Kurt.
You said Kurt.
Kurt, was an integral part of that conversation, Kyle. I was getting to you. Anyway, you're listening to Upstart Live. We broadcast 2 p.m. every Tuesday. It's currently 19 past 2, and we'll be back right after this.
We're back. Welcome back to the studio. We have Rachael Roberts with us, and she's here to give us a rundown of the history of student unions. And I think you're speaking to Jeannie, the national president of the National Tertiary Education Union. So a really big get. So I'm really excited to hear what you have. But start us off. What's happening in the world of student politics?
As we all know, that next week is the La Trobe University student elections, which is not everyone's favourite type of semester. But I'm asking the question, what actually is a student union and how has it changed in the past 30 years? Because it's actually a pretty interesting history. Many Victorian universities, including La Trobe, were set up around the mid-60s, and student unionism was particularly popular in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Funding increased again in the 1970s under the Whitlam government, and many saw this as the golden age for universities because they had free education and their unions, which were also called representative councils, bodies or guild, They would generally own the bar on campus along with all the other restaurants and cafes, so they could give really good deals, and they ran the O-Week activities, which, they still do, and their clubs, which they still do, and they could provide really good advocacy service and have really cool bands come and play. So you often see photos of really cool gigs that you don't so much anymore.
So it's not so much just advocacy for students, but it's also the social life as well.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Student unions provide.
During this time of the 70s, Monash and Latrobe were also extremely politically active. Some people think it still is, but it was nothing compared to that, because they would hold these massive protests with over 4,000 people, against the Vietnam War and capital punishment and all sorts of other things. The interesting thing is, if you were enrolled in a university before 2006, you would generally automatically be signed up to your union or guild or whatever they called it at the university you're at, and you would pay a fee to the union so they could spend it on things that would enrich and support you during your university experience. You could opt out, but you'd still have to pay the fee, so basically not many people did opt out, because what would be the point? Unless you want to do it on principle.
Yes. And then we had some controversial changes, I think it was by the Howard government around that time, which changed it all as well.
Absolutely. Because just put in context, can you imagine all the students enrolled in the union, whereas these days you'd get about 4,000 people, I think, are enrolled at Latrobe Student Union, where we have 36,000 students in attendance. So it's pretty small. But yeah, then in 2005, as you were saying, the Howard government passed voluntary student unionism, which meant that the unions could no longer make students pay any fee that wasn't strictly academic. So student unions suffered a lot in this time, in the 2000s, and a lot of them were liquidated or lost their independence. And then in 2011, the government brought in SAF, which is the Student Service and Amenities Fee, which we should all be familiar with. So we should be paying that. Yep. So how that works is the union then negotiates with the union for a percentage of the SAF to fund themselves. So this year, the Latrobe thinks they'll make $7.5 million on all of our SAF, a lot of money. And the Latrobe Student Union has been allocated $2,750,000, and that will be their funding, which is mainly controlled by the students who then run the union.
And it's big money too, and I think that's why we really need to take student union elections
Absolutely.
really importantly. I think some people get a bit tired about it and jaded.
What happens to your money.
Yeah.
But before we think that's amazing and we're going to go get our free sausage and we're going to love it, although you should, that's on now, I think. Melbourne Uni gets over $4.5 million. That's 34% of the overall staff. SAF, which means they can have Art versus Science and the Smith Street Band come and play on their campus, and that is pretty cool. Pretty cool for them.
I didn't know. You didn't get me a sausage today, Gert.
I know.
What?
Too wet.
It's on
I
today
didn't want to leave
again?
the studio.
Is it on every day? It's on every Tuesday. I actually haven't used it this semester, even though I
Oh.
should. But yeah, it's on every day.
Every Tuesday?
Every
Provided
Tuesday.
free by your student union?
Well, free.
Well,
it's paid
it's
for
not
by
free.
your staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to get my
So-
sausage from
get
every
involved.
Tuesday.
So now we are lucky enough to be talking to Jeannie Ray, who is the National President of the National Tertiary Education Union, and she has either been involved or adjacent to student unions and student politics for her entire adult life, so she will hopefully be able to tell us all we need to know about unions. Are you there? Hello? Jeannie?
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming to talk to us today.
A pleasure.
We were wondering, how do you think student unions have changed in the past 20 years?
Look, I think one of the big changes, of course, in the past 20 years has been the change made by the former Liberal governments or coalition governments' voluntary student unionism, or VSU as it became known to those of us interested in student unions. But in a sense, that has to be seen in the context of, there was a campaign going on by the Liberal students, mainly Liberal students, but also the even further right-wing students for many, many years, back to when I was a student in the late 70s, in their attempts to actually try and bring down the funding of student unions through students paying fees. And because, of course, what legitimated student unions was that students paid the fees, we had elections, those that were interested got involved and ran for election and voted. And that whole setup was an anathema to those students who didn't want to see students being active on campus, and particularly when students were supporting progressive and even left-wing causes. And so the very students from the right who got involved in all that student activity themselves and benefited greatly from it for their future careers, or they learned, of course, wanted to close that down. So when they did get into government, they did. I think that's had a big impact upon the capacity for students to organise and organise with the legitimacy of that student unions are funded by the fees collected from students, and students can readily get involved in this.
So do you think it was the student unions and them having a larger following that actually made people care and be more politically active on campus? I mean, everyone at Latrobe...
Oh, I think very much so.
Yeah. People at Latrobe tend to roll their eyes when they hear student elections. I don't want to get harassed on my way to class. But during the golden age when people were involved in their unions, did they care more, or did they still roll their eyes at elections?
Oh, of course they still rolled their eyes. But elections, the ways that your generation runs the elections are just really heavy-handed compared to in previous eras, when in a sense, there was many less election rules because they didn't have to make election rules because people had done a whole lot of fairly obnoxious behaviours. So I think that might indicate something. They were basically a fairly civilised affair, like going to vote in your federal elections and the like. That was around the actual voting, so people weren't so annoyed about that. Of course, it did mean, though, that you did go and do things which you're not allowed to do now, I understand, in most places. Like we used to go and hand out our flyers in the halls of residences and so on. Did hand them out in classes. You would, in your tutorial, you'd say, I'm running in the election, or my friends are. And the tutor would let you do that without it being a big fuss one way or the other. And sometimes it'd end up with a discussion about, I don't like your type. And tutors were more prepared to let that happen rather than them being worried about getting into trouble themselves or thinking that it was something that interfered with the class time, which I can sort of understand, having been an academic for years, because we don't have much class time. But, so I think the whole environment changes about whether or not the whole thing is seen as a legitimate activity.
Yeah, for sure. I can't imagine anyone being allowed to hand out flyers and tutorials. People would be furious on the stalker space.
Jeannie, Rachael said before that 4,000 students are now members of the Latrobe Student Union.
About that, yeah.
About that number, which is, about a quarter of the number of students that go to Latrobe, or even less. Is this... Do you think, we know across society that unions are having trouble maintaining their memberships, the membership is becoming less and less. Do you think there's something in society, something cultural that's happening there, and why people aren't signing up to unions in as much numbers as they were before?
Well, I think the thing of people not joining and signing up to things is a phenomenon. I don't think the lack of participation in student unions as compared to trade unions or labour unions is so comparable. Although, in both cases, there was a time when, of course, when all students used to be, unless they were a conscious objector, part of the student union, so it was in effect compulsory. And there was a time too when there was a lot of workplaces where you sort of had to join up to the union to be on the job, so that helped union membership and density. And so I think the reasons why people have dropped away from joining their labour unions is not so totally unrelated to the assault on student unions, but also upon other civic society organisations, and the very ideas of that. If you are actually going to achieve something, you are going to have to get together with some other folk to do it, because we don't have much individual power when it comes to actually taking on really big issues like being underpaid or having an unsafe workplace, or governments trying to introduce the sorts of policies around universities which are an anathema to the whole idea of the independence of a university.
Ginny, I just had another question I just thought of, because it was quite hard to research this actually, but obviously our unions are mostly funded by SAF now in some membership, but not really. Back in the 70s, did unions have much more money and therefore were able to provide much more than they do now?
The student unions?
Yeah.
Well, it depended what university you were at. And so what the universities would collect was a union fee from everybody unless you had a really good conscientious objection reason. And then that student union, in some places was controlled by students, in some places wasn't. But it would then distribute that money, and that money would include what was distributed to the SRC or the Student Association and to the clubs and societies, to the sports association. So there was a whole way it was measured out. So clearly the Students' Representative Council or equivalent got a portion of that, and it would have been much more probably than you get these days. But the whole student union at places where the students controlled the union, which I don't think was the case at La Trobe, as wasn't at Monash where I went, but was the case at Melbourne University, for example. So you had both elections for the union positions as well as elections for the SRC positions. And people would contest them, and it was a really big deal. Whereas at places like Monash and I think La Trobe, the union was actually run by the university and students didn't have a majority on it. But it didn't stop you sort of running highly contested elections for all the student spots and then make a huge big fuss and try and get the numbers and persuade the others to go your way. And you used to be able to do that. And
Jeannie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are a little bit cut for time here at Upstart Live, and I'd love to hear all you have to say about the unions, but unfortunately we have to cut it short. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Rachel, for joining us here in the studio. You are listening to Upstart Live. I'm Naim Kurt, and with me is Alana Mazurk. The time is 28 minutes to 3, and we broadcast live at 2 p.m. every Tuesday on upstart.net.au. Now, coming up, we have Hajer Changar and Adam Ioannis following up on all the tech news which has come out after the Apple press conference this week, and we'll be up with that shortly.
So here with us for all our tech news, we have Harsha and Adam. How are you guys doing?
I'm pretty horrible, thanks.
Oh,
Got the flu.
classic Adam.
So
all
thankfully
right.
the camera's not on.
Yeah. Yeah, you look awful.
Thanks.
I think we're just both down. I'm really tired as well.
All right, so let's bump up this great show today with Kurt and I. Great.
Some
We're
more
doing
enthusiasm,
great.
please.
Anyway, so tell us about the tech roundup. What happened at the Apple press conference apart from those awful, awful headphones?
Oh, don't say that.
What?
I'm actually an Apple fan. There's nice other stuff they introduced as well. They have advanced new camera systems, and the performance of the battery is like twice for the iPhone 6, and like the battery lasts I think 2 hours longer. They have stereo speakers, which
Don't
are
all
really,
phone have stereo speakers?
but there's,
No,
they
they
have
don't. They have mono speakers. The new
Yeah.
ones
Right.
have stereo speakers.
So explain
twice as loud.
what are stereo speakers, so they're like
So mono
surround.
is single channel.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously this isn't going to be like fully surround because it's coming from a single
Yeah.
thing, but it'll come through 2 channels, which means it will be louder and also better quality. Still going to be bad quality because it's coming out of a phone, but it's better than what it is. Everyone's going crazy about the new color jet black, which they have done
and the
before.
matte black.
So it's really no big deal, other than the fact that scratches will show a lot more. David Pogue, who's a respected tech journalist and former New York Times writer, was at the Apple event, and I just took down a few of his notes. Pretty interesting. There's not going to be a physical button, so the home button is going to be gone. It's instead going to send a vibration when you touch it to make it seem like there's a button there.
So very similar to the new MacBooks with the touchpad as well.
It's exactly like that technology, which is good because I know a lot of people who've broken that button and can't use it because they've somehow managed to
Do you know
stuff
what
it
I
up.
hate about the iPhone 6? And
Tell me, Alana, what do you hate about the
All
iPhone?
right, Adam, I'll tell you.
Everything?
You know when you get a really sweaty thumb and you can't,
and
it
the-
doesn't,
It doesn't
will
work,
that
yeah.
affect the vibration then, do you think, on an iPhone 7? Sweaty or wet hands?
Well, what do you mean, the vibration or the fingerprint?
Like the so when you press the phone, will it pick up that vibration? Did the writer mention
it
that?
should.
Okay.
It should. It's force.
Literally anything touching the
Yeah.
screen. Okay, well
If-
that's
if
a lot better
apply
than a
force
button.
to it, it'll send a vibration.
Yeah.
Similar like a button. Also, you don't have to swipe to unlock now. It's just press again, fingerprint. You know,
Much easier.
the what else was? It's been certified to last a meter underwater for half an hour,
Right.
which it's not a super useful thing, but it's
If you drop it in the
definitely
toilet.
You can take it back out and
Yeah.
use it.
if you forget the phone in the toilet for about half an hour, you should
Yeah.
be fine, as long as you remember it in that half-hour time period. Now, the thing that a lot of people are upset about are the headphones. Now, the AirPod... Firstly, this is not the first phone to do this. The Moto Z, did this a month ago. But no one cares about Motorola, so no one
No.
cares about it. Yet, Apple is the first... I don't know. No, they're not the first. They're the second company to do it, but everyone's still losing their bollocks about it. Now, one of the reasons for this was the actual input jack is huge inside the phone. Like, the module is massive, so taking that out clears a lot of room for extra stuff, such as a prolonged battery life, better screen,
Camera.
etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, the camera's up the top. We'll get to that in a second. So, basically, where are we?
We're talking about the earphones.
Yeah.
No, the AirPods,
Yep.
Bluetooth. Now, they have the W1 processor, which is a special processor that Apple have released only in the AirPods at the moment. That's supposed to be a better connectivity. Because normal Bluetooth is not that great. Like, it never has been. It's still not that great. This is meant to be the next level.
And it only works with Apple products?
It's only in the Apple AirPods.
Right. So
So-
that's
With
how they
like
get their
MacBook,
money.
your Apple Watch, your iPhone, your iPod, it connects to all of it.
No,
And-
it's not that. It's any Bluetooth device can, any Bluetooth earphones can connect to the
Apple.
iPhone 7. But these AirPods the product, the AirPods, not the phone. The AirPods have a specific processor in them, which makes the connectivity much more seamless and faster.
Okay.
That's the big
That's
thing
what it
about
is.
the AirPods.
Okay.
They're rubberized, so they're meant to fit in and stay in your ear. Because the current Apple headphones don't.
Well, I
And-
think there's
Problem.
going to be outrage on the headphones anyway,
Yeah.
no matter
Well,
what.
there
but-
already is. Everyone hates
But
it.
there's a new PS4?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a new PS4.
Finally.
Don't know anything about that.
So,
But isn't it a PS5?
No, it's
No.
PS4 Pro. Okay, so compatibility with all PlayStation 4 games prior, which is good, because one of the bad things was that no one liked, PS4 didn't play PS3 games. So this is the PS4 Pro. It was leaked a few months ago as the PS4 Neo, as having 4K gaming. It does indeed have 4K gaming, but it's not actually 4K gaming. It's more like 2K plus, in a way.
Right.
So it's like,
Harsha, how
1080.
excited about this are you?
Not at all.
Oh.
I'm not a console person. I don't do games.
Oh. Well, but what about, can you watch movies on the PS4 like the other one?
Yeah, of course.
So there you
What-
go, Harsha. You can get a PS4 Pro and watch some sweet
It doesn't
movies.
have the new
Yay.
DHD Blu-ray player in
Oh.
it, however, which is the new
Why?
Blu-ray player.
Oh.
Because I don't know.
Because then they can bring
Yes.
out the PS5 with the Blu-ray.
Well, the Xbox One does have the new UHD
Oh.
Blu-ray player, but the new Xbox doesn't have 4K gaming. That's coming next year.
Ooh, so I can't wait to hear about that when, if we're still doing the show next year, Adam, you can come on and just say words that I don't understand.
And Haja, will
That's
you,
not my problem.
as the huge Apple fan you are, will you be lining up to get the
I
new
am.
iPhone?
I'm going
Yeah?
on Friday.
Friday?
Oh my god!
First in, first served, so I have to get there early.
Are you getting the
Map
sleeping
bag.
bag out and
Oh, no.
take a nap?
Not
and-
that big of a fan, but
So
I'll
Harsha's
go.
not going to
Matt
be
or
at the
Jet?
group meeting, everyone. We've just found
Oh,
out.
whoops.
Are you getting the matte black or the jet black?
The matte black.
Yeah, Matt's
Of course.
Matt's nice. All right,
It
well,
looks really
Jet's
good.
already sold out.
all right. Well, thank you for that, guys. We're Upstart Live. You're with Alana and Kurt. We'll be back in a sec.
And we're back. You're listening to Upstart Live, and we're 20 minutes to 3. Now, coming up, we have the Aussie movie Spin Out. Now, beers, utes and frocks lined the screen as the Aussie movie Spin Out had its Melbourne premiere. We will have one of the co-directors, Mark Gracie, with us in the moment to talk about the movie. Really excited to have him in here. It's a really big get for our program here. But first we have Dan Martinez, who went to the screening last Friday, and he's going to tell us everything about the movie.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it because he said that there was a dog.
There is indeed a dog. I actually got to meet the lovely Taya. I'm honestly not 100% sure. She looked a little bit maybe golden retriever-esque, but she was absolutely gorgeous. She came up right up to the camera, which was fantastic. Now, yeah, like I said, I managed to make it to the screen. It was quite a star-studded cast. We have Xavier Samuel, Morgan Griffin, and Lincoln Lewis you may know him from Home and Away.
Fantastic.
No.
But yes.
I know Xavier Samuel though. That's great. He's a great Australian actor.
He was a lovely Australian. He was also a very nice dude. He was a good chat, which was very. I also managed to have a chat with Tim Ferguson, one of the actual co-directors, and the other co-director, Mark Gracie. I believe we have him on the line right now. G'day, Mark. How you doing? No? Yeah, Mark. Are you here? Are you there?
I am.
Oh, no
Yeah.
worries. Mark, congratulations on the screening. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Now, just a couple of questions, Mark. First off, for those who know nothing about the movie, can you describe it in 5 words?
Jesus.
Putting you on the spot a bit, but, you know.
It's a romantic comedy set at a giant party in the country.
There we go. A little more than 5 words, but I'll count it for you. So, with
Yeah.
the kind of Shepparton background, do many of the cast or the crew have very authentic country roots?
No.
No, so kind of the exterior perspective then.
Well, yeah, but we wanted to make sure that we... the easy thing, I guess, in some ways for us city slickers, literally, could have been to sort of take the piss out of the whole idea of a bachelor and Spencer's Ball and ute mustering, but in fact Tim and I wanted to do the exact opposite, and as you've seen in the movie, be actually quite quite romantic about it almost in some ways, and show sort of the sense of community that can still exist out there.
Really celebrate the Aussie ideals. Now, with such an Aussie ideal-heavy movie, how do you think that'll go with more international viewers? Is there any plans for an international release?
Well, the film's, I sold it to Sony worldwide, and Sony Los Angeles have actually got money in the film. And I guess, really, the way I did that, I guess, is sort of selling the exotic angle of it. That it can play as exotic,
So more the outside looking in a little bit.
Yeah, but the other thing about it, and the other sort of clincher, I guess, for Sony as well, is that I sold them on a car culture that hadn't been portrayed on the big screen, which is actually really unusual to find.
Mark, for those of us who weren't fortunate enough to be at the screening on Friday, would you be able to tell us what the movie is about exactly?
It's about a B&S ball, which is a bachelor and Spencer's ball, in that they're not as popular as they used to be, but certainly through the 80s and 90s they were very popular. But basically what they are is because they're country and people live in, away from each other so much, once a year they get together and have a big party and hopefully get lucky. We also melded that idea with ute mustering, which is basically...
Mark, it's a bush doof. Is it a bush doof? Have you heard of a bush doof? That's what they call them now.
No,
it's so funny,
it's
the
not.
ute parties.
Yeah, it's not really a bush. Not really. It sort of is. There's no doof in the film, though.
Oh, okay.
No doof, but a
No
dog.
doof.
So that's the bonus point.
And then there's lots of sort of pop songs.
Yeah, speaking of the soundtrack, that's something that I really, really gravitated to. Was it important to kind of keep that soundtrack very homegrown? A lot of homegrown artists on there. You have your Evermores, your Kiss Chases, etc.
Yeah, well, we did a deal because of the connection to Sony Pictures with Sony ATV, which is the publishing arm, and then subsequently with Sony Music as well, especially with the Taylor Henderson song that's actually being literally released this week, and the clip, which is actually shot in in the film, an extended version of that. But yeah, we did want to. We wanted it to be all local. And we also didn't want it to be too country. There's a little bit of country because we've got Brooke McClymont in the film from the McClymonts, which are probably the biggest female country and western band in the country. But we just, we just wanted to. I mean, there's some great music, and John Hume from Evermore did the score as well, and he's just done a brilliant job.
And one last thing, Mark. So we know your daughter Stella had a hand in the creation of the movie. How was it like sharing this kind of experience with your family?
It was good. Always share with your family. She is the target market for. She's a 14-year-old girl, so she would sit in the edit with us, and we're a bunch of grey-haired old men, so it was good to hear her opinion often. And often she was right and we were wrong, so that helped us sort of stay with the target market. Plus, she had a bit of work to do with the design stuff of the film as well.
Thank you so much for coming on, Mark, and telling us all about the film.
No worries.
I'll give it back to the presenters now, and so you don't have to hear my voice anymore.
That was Mark and Dan. They're talking about Spin Out, the new Australian movie, and we know, especially in Australia, that we really need to be supporting the movie industry here locally. So
Yeah,
I'd advocate for everyone to get out and see that. I think it sounds like a fantastic film. So
I don't actually. I'm sure that we'll be promoting when it is going to be live in cinema.
The 15th.
But the 15th. So 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days.
This Friday. Oh, there you go. So everyone can go out and have a look and.
we could have an upstart live screening.
Yeah, let's do it.
Go in together.
Star screening.
Oh,
Day
I don't want to
out.
go with you.
Oh, not me. Why not?
I'm just kidding. I like you. You're all right.
I'm all right.
No, sounds good. Especially Australian films. They don't get enough rap, so we need to do more with that. Maybe on Cut the Cut on Fridays every week, we can have an Australian segment. There you go, Jake.
Now, we do have the story coming up about Greyhound legislation.
legislation.
Matt Coburn is really heavily involved in the Greyhound industry, and he's produced a fantastic story about
Yeah,
that.
we'll have him in after this.
All right. With us now, we have Matt Coburn. You come to talk to all about the greyhound industry and the massive flux and change which is happening at the moment.
Yes, I have.
What can you tell us? What's been going on?
Well, for the past couple of weeks, we all know roughly what's been going on, but if you've been watching mainstream media, it hasn't actually been covered too extensively. In my household, we have Sky News on every day, and they have debates, they have absolutely everything going on. But from the mainstream media, they haven't actually covered much of it. It's been put on the first thing that happened and then not much else.
Well, essentially, we're talking about the greyhound industry. It's been banned in New South Wales.
Yes.
And that's come about because of that Four Corners investigation,
Yes.
which aired on TV and had all that news about live baiting in the industry, which apparently was being used. And
The footage of that was shocking.
Yeah, absolutely horrific
Was
footage.
shocking.
Absolutely horrific. So that happened on July 6th, and it was announced via Facebook, Mike Baird, that they'd be shutting down the industry. It's going to take full effect July 1st next year, and that was after the Four Corners. Announcing it on Facebook was pretty a different precedent. That's the first time that has ever happened, as far as I'm aware.
do we know why? Why would the government release that, the New South Wales
Very
government?
odd.
Yeah, I'm not really certain why, but
Trying to get in with the youth.
yeah, I think that's it. He's trying to, I think trying to get a popularity with the youth, announcing it on Facebook.
What's your involvement with the greyhound industry? You talked about your family. You've been watching it heavily on the news.
Yes, well, I'll admit that I have a bit of a biased opinion because my family race and train greyhounds. So we've been keeping a very close eye on this because it may just be happening in New South Wales, but it's a certain precedent that's set with shutting down industries that it could go over multiple states and multiple other industries.
And you're involved in the Victorian
Yes, the
greyhound
Victorian
industry.
racing.
Did your
industry.
greyhounds ever race in New South Wales?
No, we haven't raced in New South
Does-
Wales.
Greyhound owners and racers in Victoria, do they go to New South Wales to race?
Yeah, there's races where they have.
So it does
come cross-border.
affect other states as well as just New South Wales?
It's more a precedent that's that's being set with the industry's been shut down very, very suddenly, and so it's more what could be happening in future. So it's a lot of people's livelihoods and lives. So it's just what they're expecting to happen in future.
Do you think people that are anti-gambling are going to be on the bandwagon for this purely because it shuts down another form of gambling and not actually look at it in the greyhound perspective, like greyhound ownership and their livelihood perspective?
I hadn't really thought about that, but
well, think about it. If it shut down in Victoria, it would affect your family and yourself.
Yeah,
would it
and
not?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that gambling-wise, it would affect a lot of people who would be anti-gambling because, you know, I guess that there is that whole aspect when it comes to any racing of any industry. You can't really look past.
Yeah, sorry to bring it
that at
in,
all.
but
no,
yeah.
that's absolutely true. And it's I know Sportsbet have put campaigns out to try to help fight this as well. Yeah, because it's a whole. It's really interesting how there's a lot of knock-on effects with everything. It's not just the people directly involved.
Matt, we've heard all the horrible news out there about live baiting and sort of live possums being used to train these greyhounds to race. Are you aware of any of that going in the industry of your connections? Are you aware of any other trainers who are using those methods?
I'll put it this way. When we watched that, we got GRV, Greyhound Racing Victoria, put in an email to everyone involved saying that this will be airing. We watched that and absolutely horrified by it. It's one of the most disgusting things I think I've ever seen. Like, it's not something that should ever be occurring. No one that I know, thank God, does that, or everyone I know has been absolutely disgusted by that. So it's one of those things. It's like, I think if we knew anyone doing in that, we wouldn't be involved with them because it's a horrible thing.
Because
to
there's
happen.
been some quite prominent trainers who are linked with that, but you're saying that in your experience,
not in our experience,
you're not aware of anyone who's
not that we're personally connected to. A lot of the people that were caught were actually higher stake people, and we're more associating with the lower rung trainers. You know, because it's more for us. It's more a hobby and a pastime more than a wave. Because both my parents are retired teachers, so they're.
So it seems that even with the opposition, we're going to be. It's a bit of a waiting game to see if it does go ahead.
Yeah, it's passed both the lower and upper house with it, but there is currently
New South Wales, of course.
New South Wales, but there's currently court battles
as appeals
and appeals going on. So it's something just to watch the space. Just a lot of them, because it was based on an 800-page report outlining the cruelty, and animal activists have said it's a great thing, but you know, obviously not everyone's seeing eye to eye, and a lot of people, the people in the industry, are trying to fight the legitimacy of the report because they're claiming that it's based on not all the evidence is completely factual. Although there's other people, of course, debating that. So there's two sides. I think it'd be really interesting. Obviously, I have a very, very biased side. We should definitely get some animal activists in or someone else to give the other perspective on it, because
we can try and do that for you. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming in and talking to us about that. And yeah, let's keep our ears and eyes open about that. Thank you, Matt Coburn. We'll be back next with The Cut.
Now in the studio with us, we have Jake and Georgie giving us all the pop culture roundup and in the world of cinema and TV with The Cut. So what's been happening?
So this week we are talking about this TV show that we assigned Georgie to watch.
Yeah, well, it came a recommendation of Phil, who works with us here at Upstart, and it's called Unreal. So the premise is that it's like this high-powered executive. And she is from what I believe, she's the producer. I only saw the pilot, but she's the producer of this reality, using air quotes, TV show, and it just goes, and it's called Enchanted or something, and it's just The Bachelor basically, and it just goes to show how scripted and the whole facade of reality TV shows.
How old is it? Is it just come out this year?
Or last year? Like the first season. I think, yeah, either this year or last year. It's recent. It's very recent.
And are you planning to continuing on with it, or?
Well, I would. I'm really enjoying it. They're only like half-hour episodes, and it's hilarious. The premise of the pilot was that this girl who had Rachael, her name is the character, and she kind of had like an episode, a bit of an emotional episode, and she left, and now she's back, and she's like her, I don't know, ex-boyfriend has now moved on with a fiance and everything, but she's got this kind of moral compass that keeps the producer who just wants ratings at bay. So it's interesting. I want to see how that plays out.
And did a musical get announced this week?
Oh my God. Muriel's Wedding is going to be a musical announced by the Sydney Theatre Company.
I haven't seen that movie in a really long time.
Oh my gosh,
was there any musical numbers in that movie?
It's all ABBA.
Yeah, so
it's
what,
all
is
ABBA.
the musical just going to be ABBA?
Well, it's based on the film, so yeah,
But like,
I guess. When you said I haven't seen it in a long time, I thought you were going to finish that sentence as I haven't seen it, and then that would just mean you're un-Australian.
That would mean I'm terrible.
You're terrible. Very nice weave in.
And just for in terms of what's coming up on the Cut Uncut that's on Fridays,
Yes, at 2
do you
o'clock.
have any idea what's going on for this week?
Well, this week will be all Emmy discussions, no?
Sorry?
Emmys?
Emmys,
We'll be
that's
discussing
right.
the
We're
Emmys.
talking about Emmys. Also,
My,
Adam and I are very excited.
And also, obviously, my favourite show, South Park.
Yes.
Which it's not, no. I have never seen an episode.
Adam and I are very excited for that.
You
We're going
are.
to make sure you get the file to watch.
So what season is this now? The one that's being released on Thursday?
Sorry?
What's number season?
It's season 20.
Season 20?
Season
Wow,
20.
okay. Interesting.
And yeah, so we'll be talking going more in depth.
Everything Emmys, everything South Park.
And that's with myself, Jake Kohler, Georgie Meadows, Adam Ioannidis, and Dan Martinez, who is our producer, looking at me very intensely for not saying his name straight away.
So yeah, that'll be Friday at 2.
Yep.
Looking really forward to it. I think
Yeah.
the first few episodes have been fantastic. And,
Thank you. I mean,
now
we're
we-
having a ball.
All right, so make sure you tune into it. Now we have What the What, Alana? I
Yeah,
think?
Georgie.
A very brief what
Tell
the
me,
what,
yeah.
Alana.
I think we should do the first one about Klaus Jostad. I said
Josted.
that. Damn it.
Oh,
Josted.
Well, I mean, you put on the accent, I think.
Okay.
That's, you probably said that correctly. Yes, hilarious. So, man gets his genitals stuck in an IKEA chair. That's the title of the
Ouch.
article.
And he's
Ouch,
he's
indeed.
a 45-year-old man. I think that we
Yes,
really
well,
need to
he-
tell us about that.
Well, from what I understand is that he was bathing and he had this stool in the shower because he just had a surgery and he couldn't put too much pressure on his knees. And he sat down and he went to stand up and something caught. Which
That being his
Something, two
penis.
things.
That being his testicles, but I wasn't sure I was allowed to say that on air.
Two
That's
things,
why we
not
threw
caught.
Jonathan.
Well, I don't think you can sue IKEA for that. So,
No,
yeah.
I mean, although it would be incredibly uncomfortable, I'm sure. Yeah, a lawsuit.
Well, thank you for that, Georgie. And
Pleasure.
thank you for everyone else for being on the show. Dan Martinez, Matt Coburn. We had Jake just then with the cut. We had, who else do we
Josh on the
have?
figure,
Josh
Kyle
on the figure.
Humphreys,
But also our guest
Haja
on the
Chunga.
phone.
Gian.
Mark Gracie as well with the Spin Out movie. That was
Johnny
really
Rouse,
great
yeah.
for him to come on. And yeah, I guess thanks, Kurt, for being my co-host.
Thanks as always.
No,
yeah. And
always,
we have to
yeah.
apologise too. There was no
Yeah.
visuals this week. So
We had some good stuff as well. Next week, 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
It'll be
lined
back.
up next Tuesday, and hopefully a sunnier day than the
Definitely.
wet weather. And
And hopefully everyone enjoys the finals. But we have to say, Crows Saturday night against Sydney, we're going to win.
all right. Thank you.